Hi guys, the Cheap Weenie here with a review of the Kahr CW40. This is the C line of products by Kahr. I guess you would call it their economy or cheaper line of products. There are just a few differences in this gun and, for example, the P40, the PM40, different guns like that are slightly more feature rich. For example, on the CW40 we have a pinned front sight. On the more expensive models that is dovetailed, drift adjustable, so that's a little bit cheaper. Obviously not adjustable left to right, but you can still get replacement sights for it, so it's really not a big deal. Another difference is the barrel, the rifling in it. Obviously that's not something you can see physically from the camera, but nonetheless it has conventional style rifling, unlike the polygonal style in the more expensive models. Also notice on the side of the slide how the markings are done. It's kind of dirty. These are engraved. On the more expensive models they are actually roll marked and look a little bit better. Another difference that some people may be interested in is the slide stop on the CW or the CM is a MIM or metal injection molding, I believe is what that stands for, versus an actual machined part on the other models. That doesn't bother me. Personally, I haven't had any problems with that type of metal, and if you do have a problem, Kahr will send you a new one, so not a big deal really. Another difference that kind of does make a difference is the number of magazines that are included. The CW40 includes one 6-round magazine. The P models, the PM and so on, include 2 magazines. If you buy your magazines new, that may be an issue because they cost about $40 brand new. However, I was able to pick up 2 7-round. You can see the extended finger rest there relative to the 6-round shorter mag. 7-round mag, got 2 of those used for $25 each shipped. They're used, but you certainly can't tell by looking at them. They appear to be brand new. I got those off a forum member over at thefiringline.com. Don't visit there a whole lot, but every now and then I stop by and I scored big this time. Basic specs on the gun: it's 16.8 ounces unloaded. That does not include the magazine. The magazine is another 1.8, I believe. In any case, it's a light gun for the size. You can see the grip is very thin. Of course, it's a single stack configuration, so very thin. This gun is a little bit taller than, say, a subcompact Glock, which is what I recently got rid of before I got this. A subcompact Glock is maybe half an inch shorter. I don't know the exact numbers. However, this gun is so much narrower that it's actually easier to conceal than the shorter grip on the subcompact Glock. And you get a full 3 fingers on the grip. If you have fatter fingers, your bottom one may hang off, but that extended floor plate takes care of that if you prefer. Personally, I like the flush fitting floor plate simply because grip length can be the hardest thing to hide if you're trying to conceal the weapon. So a flush or close to flush floor plate like this is the way to go, in my opinion. Now, as far as reliability of this gun, Kahr states that you should expect a 200-round break-in period before really judging its reliability. Well, mine has been 100% reliable right from the box. I've fired about 500 rounds through it, have had 0 failures, absolutely no problems with it whatsoever. And that's with both the 6-round magazine and the 7-round magazines. Both of those have been perfect. Or all 3 of those rather. I actually have 2 of these. Now, I did have an interesting quirk with it. I'm not sure if you would call it a problem. When the gun was new and unfired, with the magazine in, pushing the mag release button like so would not eject the magazine. You could push on that button all day long and it would not come out. To release the mag, you had to apply upward pressure on the base plate, then press the button, and when you released, the mag would fall out. Immediately after taking it to the range and firing it a few times, that never happened again. So I don't know if it was maybe a piece of stray plastic caught in the mag somewhere that was causing that to happen. That was before I had these other magazines, so I was unable to test it with a different mag. But in any case, first mag fired, it never did it again, so I haven't really given that a second thought. You'll notice the back strap as well as the front strap are heavily checkered with plastic raised squares. Those are pretty aggressive. They've got quite a coarse texture, and for the type of gun it is, I like that a lot. It gives you a good solid grip. It definitely is not going to stick in your or slip in your hand. Now, there is something to be said about that. If you have soft hands, or you take this gun out and shoot several hundred rounds through it. For example, when I first bought it, I immediately went home and loaded up about 250 rounds of ammo and took it to the range and shot all 250 rounds in about 30 or 40 minutes. And I work with my hands, so my hands are not exactly delicate, but I definitely had some red soreness in the palm of my hand. That's an extreme scenario, though. Most people are not going to take this gun to the range and fire that many rounds. I simply wanted to get it through the break-in session in one go and see what would happen, and I was pleasantly surprised. Let's talk about the sights. The sights on this gun are, I believe they're referred to as a post and dot style. You've got a vertical line in the back, in the center, and a round dot in the front. The idea is that you dot the eye. You put the dot directly on top of the white bar, and that'll put you on target. I'm not crazy about that. I've had it on another gun that I've since traded off, but it's just not my favorite setup. I prefer a 3-dot style. That's what I've got on my Glock 22, which I compete with, so I put thousands of rounds through that gun. I've gotten accustomed to a 3-dot setup, and that's just what I prefer. I like the 3-dot. However, these sights are easy to change. The rear one obviously is dovetailed in. The front one, it's pinned, but it's just as easy to change. Really not a problem either way. So if you like the factory sights, great. If not, I'll probably throw some night sights on at some point, or maybe some True Glow TFOs if they even make them for this gun. I haven't looked into that yet. They may not. But some type of either night sight or a tritium, or rather a fiber optic sight. Now let's look at how we field strip this gun. Notice on the slide there's a witness mark right there. You may not be able to discern that in the video. Now this gun, of course, is clear. Normally I don't make a big deal about showing on the video if it's clear or not. I'm a big boy, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to clear the gun before I bring it in front of the camera. But I'll show you. Some people like to see that. Yeah, it's clear. We're safe. So, witness mark on the slide. There's another one on the frame. That comes into play when we field strip. You see the crescent cutout in the slide. There's a crescent-shaped protrusion on the top of the slide stop that rides behind the rail in the slide. So in order to push that pin out, which is the first step in field stripping, you have to pull the slide back and align that crescent opening with the crescent part of the slide stop. And those witness marks make that very easy. Instead of having to try to look through the hole, just line up the marks. Now I use a grip like this that I learned from field stripping Glocks. You basically put this part of the gun right in the web of your hand, grab with your front 2 fingers and just pull back. That makes it very easy to line up the notches without much hand strain at all. Then on the back side you can see where it protrudes through. Just push on that, it'll pop out, and then grab it with your fingers and pull it out. Now when this gun was new, it was too tight to do that. You could not push it out with your finger. I just used the handle of a plastic screwdriver to get it started, and then after that, and after firing it a few hundred times, now it comes out easy enough. Once you pulled that out, just pull the trigger and keep it pulled, and the frame slides right off the front. Now, here's a complaint I have with this gun. It does not have a captured recoil spring. When you take this spring out, it can come right off the end. Unlike a Glock, where there's a lip at both ends that keeps that spring contained on the rod, this does not have that. And so it's rather difficult to get it back put into the gun. Take a look at this part of the barrel here. Make sure you can see that. See how it's shiny and the rest of the barrel is matte finish? That's where the finish has been worn off. So there you see what I mean by it's not captured. It comes off and is generally a mess to get fed back in there. Now the guide rod itself comes out of there. Now look at the finish on that. See how it's all worn off? When it was new, that rod was completely black. And that's just with 500 rounds. It's all scraped off. Whether that's a problem or not, we don't know yet. As you may be aware, the finish on a lot of these weapons, or a lot of these firearms, the black color is not actually the part of the finish that protects the metal. That is actually within the metal itself. The black, like on a Glock, the black color is just color. The protective finish penetrates into the metal, so you can strip all that color off if you want to, have a polished slide, and your metal is still protected from corrosion. I do not know if that's the case on this gun. I would imagine it is. Logic says that would be the case, but time will tell. We'll see if we have any corrosion issues. Now, when you put it back together, notice there's an end of the spring where the loose end is just open there, and then there's an end where it's pressed back together. The end where it's pressed back together goes against the flange on the guide rod, like so. When you field strip this, you want to pull that out and lubricate it before you put it back in, per the owner's manual. And I'll give you a better look at the wear I was talking about on the barrel. Notice you can see it, hopefully, up on the forward part of the barrel as well, where that matte finish has already been worn off shiny. I'm getting some sunlight there making a reflection. It may be hard to see, but in any case, from about here to here, basically where the mouth of the slide rides on it, it's polished smooth. So we'll have to watch that and just see what happens. You might notice there's a slight red grease on there. I'm trying something anyway, back to the red stuff and why it involves being cheap. That is SuperTech Extreme Pressure Multi-Duty Complex Lithium Grease. This comes from Walmart. It's grease. It's lithium grease. It costs about $3 for that 14-ounce jug. You can imagine how long 14 ounces, nearly a pound of lithium grease would last using it in this fashion. I mean, you're just putting on a tiny little coat. So I'm going to try it out. I just cleaned this gun today and put it on there. I'm going to take it to the range. We'll shoot a few hundred rounds through it and just see how it looks. You may be able to discern this. The feed ramp and the area around the chamber opening there is mirror polished. It's not rough like miniguns are, so that might help your feeding. I assume that's why they did it. But like I say, I've had absolutely no problems with feeding or any other malfunctions, so whatever they're doing, in my case anyway, is working. Now to reassemble the gun, same as any other pistol pretty much. You put the barrel back in. This is where it gets tricky. You feed the loose end of that spring right in there, and now you've got to keep it straight and guide it in far enough to hook back onto the barrel. Yep. Alright, that's it, back in. 3 days later we finally got it. Now, talking about springs on this gun. It has a lot of intricate parts relative to, say, a Glock within the slide. I detail stripped it today for the first time, and while it's not particularly difficult compared to some pistols, it is kind of fiddly. There are multiple parts that tend to fall out or shoot out under spring pressure. You have to be very careful, especially when you take the cover plate off the back. If you can see that spring in there, that's under a lot of pressure, and when you pull that plate off, if you don't have your thumb over it, it will shoot across the room. When you're putting it back in, it's even more difficult because you have to hold it quite a bit compressed in order to slide that cover plate back on. I ended up using a very small nut driver that basically fit the size of the end of that spring, just to press it down in there far enough that I could slide that plate on. It's just too many pieces to deal with just two hands without tools like that. But after doing it once, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a little bit fiddly, and honestly, detail stripping the slide is not something that you'll do very often, maybe every 500 to 1,000 rounds, which, well, for me that's fairly often, but for most people shooting this gun, 500 or 1,000 rounds before you detail strip it, that's going to be a long time. I shoot a lot. Most people don't shoot a pistol like this that often. The frame I have not yet detail stripped because I did not have a Torx driver that would fit that small of a bit. The smallest I had was a number 4, so I believe that's going to be a number 3 because mine was just a little too large. Some people have commented on the plastic guide rails here. Notice there are metal inserts at the back which take most of the load. Over the first 100 or 200 rounds I did find plastic shavings coming off of those. However, after now we're at about 500 rounds, that has stopped. So if you see plastic shavings at first, don't worry about it. It's just finding its shape, I guess you could say, and it will stop. Now to put the gun back together, it's the same as pretty much any other pistol. You just slide the slide back on and it will click into place there. Take the slide stop pin and push it in about as far as you can where that crescent opening or that crescent portion starts hitting the slide. Now pull your slide back again, line up those witness marks, and just press it on through, and off you go. You're good to go. Now that brings us to the trigger. Something that's different about Kahr from a lot of other pistol manufacturers is they have, I guess you would call it a double action style trigger. It has a relatively long pull. Again, this gun is empty, obviously. It has a long pull, but it's very smooth and has a clean break. You've got about a 1/4 inch of take up right at the front, about a 1/2 inch of pull, and a clean break. It's easy to shoot accurate. I don't have any problem at all even transferring directly from a Glock style pistol or Glock style trigger to this. No problems whatsoever. It does not have double strike capability. That doesn't matter one bit to me. In my opinion, if the round doesn't go off and you're in a situation where you need it to go off, that means you need to be tap, racking, and bang. You don't need to be messing around trying over and over and over again to fire it. Now that's just my opinion. Everybody has an opinion on that, and that's great. Each person's free to do their own thing. I simply offer my opinion on it. That is the majority of the features on the Kahr. I'll bring in this holster that I have for it. I'm going to do a separate video for it shortly. This is made by a company, I guess it's pronounced Barsony Leather. They're out of Beaverton, Oregon. This holster was $24. It's a cheap holster, and honestly, it's a really good holster. It's built in the style of the cheap nylon, like the Black Hawk or the Uncle Mike's holsters, with just an opening, no real forming, and a plain metal clip. The difference in this and those nylon holsters is the height of the spring steel clip, and that makes a big difference to me. When you put the gun in the holster, now I've slightly modified this holster, which I'll show you in a minute. When you put the gun in the holster, notice the position of the clip relative to the grip here. It's very close in line, which means when you put this in your pants, that grip is going to sit close to your waistline. It's going to be more concealed. Those cheap nylon holsters, the clip sits about down here. So you end up with your gun sticking 4 inches out of your waistband and flopping all over the place, especially on a gun as short as this. If you have the clip here, you've only got about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of gun in your pants, and that's not stable or comfortable. This sits in deep, very concealed, very comfortable. Now, the modification I made. When I got this holster, it was open at the tip. The problem that caused, since it's not perfectly fitted to this particular gun, it's sold as being for this gun, but it's obvious that it's made to fit a number of guns. The problem was, it would actually sink into this holster where the rear of the slide was down to about here, which made the grip down to about here and almost impossible to get a firing grip on it. Now, I wish I would have taken a video of it before I fixed that so you could see, but you get the idea. It just sat way too deep in the holster. So, being cheap, I had a solution. The Speedy Stitcher sewing awl. The motto I try to live by is, if it exists, I need to be able to fix it. And so I fixed this. Now, maybe someday I'll do a video on this as well. It's an awesome tool for sewing thicker fabrics or leather. It took me about 5 minutes to sew this up, and it's the first time I'd ever used this. I just got it today, specifically for this and a few other projects I have in mind. But the first time I've ever used it. So I'll show you an up close of what it did. You can see there, it took me about 3 stitches to figure it out, and then after that, very even, very nice stitching was no problem at all. I just stitched the end closed with some heavy waxed thread that it comes with. And now, as you saw, gun slides in, stops flush with the top of the holster, just enough room for a firing grip. It's perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Now, a point about their holsters, I originally ordered an outside the waistband holster. That was a mistake. Their holsters are made out of relatively thin, relatively floppy leather. There's just not that much support there, which is fine in an inside the waistband holster. You want it thin, you want it not to take up much space inside your pants. Not so in an outside the waistband holster. It needs to be stiff enough to not flop. The problem I had, and it was shaped an awful lot like this, just imagine it without the clip, instead with a belt loop on this side. It was just a single strip of this thin leather, and even on my 5-stitch Wilderness Tactical belt, which is a very stiff belt, it just flopped all over the place. So I sent it back. Now I sent it back Friday. According to the tracking number, they received it on Monday. It's now Friday again. I have not received my refund. They offer a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. So we'll see how painful it is to get that out of them. It was only about $25, but hey, it's $25. Hopefully they will get that refund processed right away. Back to the gun, Kahr CW40. It's an excellent firearm. It's extremely accurate. It's a blast to shoot, and it's easy to carry. Got 3 magazines for it. One is out of my truck loaded, so it didn't show up for the video today, but it looks exactly like that. You can see that extended mag just gives you about 3/4 of an inch more grip. I prefer for carry the flush fitting mag, as I stated earlier, but to each his own. Do as you please. That's the Kahr CW40. Thanks for listening, guys. This channel's pretty new, as you can see. This is my first video, so I'm going to try to keep it going. I don't have nearly as much resources or guns available as some of the great guys like Kahr 45, TN Outdoors, 9, Nothing Fancy. Channels like that, they've got a whole lot more to offer than I do, but I'm going to show what I can and try to have a little fun with it. And we'll see you next time, guys.